Yeah.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, is everybody ready to go? Directors, you're all good? Okay,
Yes.
welcome everybody and the large amount of people in the audience. Thanks for coming today. Confirmation of quorum. Good to go. Call the meeting to order. We will acknowledge that we are located on the traditional territory of the Lakotech people. Adoption of public agenda.
Move it up.
Thank you. Director Wally, who's second? Director Von Esch.
Mr. Chairman, I believe Director Rice has a couple of items to add under new business. One
That is correct.
one being the fire protection in Area D and the other being bulk water costs.
Okay. Go ahead, Director Rice. Under new business? Okay,
Yeah, I thought we would talk about that when new business comes.
sure. Petition delegations, none. Adoption of minutes.
Should we move the adoption of the agenda as amended?
Same thing.
Same? You'll take second on that?
Sure.
Okay. Director Wally and Director, what is that, Mo Winnie, right? Yeah, just checking. Business arising. Oh, sorry. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Business arising?
I do have an item. I would like to bring back the liquor license review policy for reconsideration.
Second that?
Okay, Director Wally second, and that goes where?
Business arising.
We discuss that right now?
That was a motion, Mr. Chair, to reconsider.
It's a motion to reconsider. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Go ahead, Director Rice.
The reason why I've asked for this item to be reconsidered is that ironically, there's an agenda item today for Shelter Point, and in talking to Shelter Point, it seems like perhaps maybe our policy can create some problems down the road. What I've learned is that these applications take a fair amount of time. They're expecting that they go through very quickly. I think if we add an extra layer of government oversight on it, that it just drags these liquor licenses out even further. I know that Shelter Point's got some real concerns with that. So that's why I'm asking that perhaps maybe now that I have a little bit more knowledge about it, that we should reconsider what exactly we're doing and that we're not impeding businesses when we shouldn't be. Thank you.
Thank you.
So just to be clear, is that a motion was your intent to bring back that policy for discussion? Okay. Not to reconsider the vote on it.
I would like to reconsider the vote.
Use your microphone, please.
I think not only to have a further discussion, but I think that it should be reconsidered.
So, Mr. Chairman, if it's the will of the board, we can bring that back to the next meeting for the board to have further discussion on it, and if necessary, amend it, repeal it, whatever it wishes to do.
Okay, thank you. Director Wally?
I was just going to ask Mr. Yates if he could read the motion. We get it put it right on the floor now and vote on it.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if the motion, I don't believe there is a motion on the floor. There's a motion to reconsider the matter, which was passed by the board, meaning it's on the floor for discussion. So I don't think there's any subsequent motion that I've heard.
I believe the motion was to reconsider that previous motion. That would put it back on the floor.
So if it's a reconsideration motion, I think we have to look at who made the motion, who voted, and when it was. Off the top of my head, I can't remember because there is a limited time that and folks that can make a reconsideration motion. So I don't know if we have that on hand. It might be simplest if we just bring back the policy to the next meeting, and if you want to repeal it or delete it, we can just do that.
Yeah, the problem is that it affects the item on the agenda today.
Okay, so any policy on the agenda can be overridden by the board. So you don't, like, for example, the liquor license, you don't have to do public consultation. You can, if you want, endorse the support for it without any public consultation. It gives you the latitude there. So I don't think it's going to inhibit. The board can make any motion they want in terms of any policy they want.
Okay.
Okay, so we're good. Okay, public considerations.
Mr. Chair.
Sorry? I'm sorry, I apologize. Please go ahead.
I was just wondering what part of the policy we would be reconsidering. It doesn't make sense to me that we would need to consider the policy at all. You know, we get an option from the province to send a letter of support or say nothing at all. That's pretty simple, and it's also provincial. So we can change our policy to that we don't ever make a comment, but that kind of ties your hands. You have nothing to do. So I don't understand why we would be tying up staff's time to consider a provincial matter. It simply says we can either make a comment or we can make no comment.
Right, and I think that's the liberty that we have. There was also in the policy the ability to engage public consultation, but again, if you want to forego that, you absolutely can within the current policy. So again, with the applications that are before you, if it's the timing and the effect that public consultation will have on that, the board can certainly waive that and just endorse it or no comment.
Director Dahl?
I was hoping that Director Rice would tell me what part it was that was concerning to him, because I see it very cut and dry, black and white. I don't see much that we can change. The provincial policy is that we can send a letter of support. We can send a letter that says we don't support it, or we can say we're not going to reply. So we really only have three options, and then that's it.
The concern that I had was that I would like to revisit the policy and take a look at it again, because I actually couldn't answer the questions that Shelter Point was putting to me. I think that we just, if we're going to have a policy, especially a policy that looks like it can add layers of red tape to something that shouldn't be, that perhaps maybe that's not what we intended the policy to do. So again, I think it's worthwhile to revisit it, have a further discussion, and then, you know, if we have it clear in the policy that yes, we can either move, you know, option A or option B's, then so be it. At least then we can go back and tell these businesses that, you know, that's the way that we do it.
Hey, Director Wally first, and then Director Mawhinney.
Yeah, the problem was in the policies, we were making it mandatory to have public meetings to consider these matters, as was the case on Quadra. And that would be onerous and inappropriate on Director Rice's case. So it would be better just to eliminate the policy, have it the way it always used to be for the last 17 years. That, as Director Dahl is saying, we just have the option to say no comment. But our policy took that option away.
Director Mawhinney.
Thank you, Chair. I opened up the policy just to refresh my memory. And the policy is that the regional district will undertake an appropriate community consultation process for all liquor license applications, referred to it by the Liquor Cannabis Licensing Branch. And it goes on to say that community consultation may be restricted to a specific geographic area and may take the form of surveys, public meetings, opinion referenda, or other meetings of other methods of consultation at the board's discretion. And I think at the time when we were discussing this previously, I pointed out that some regional districts that do this actually charge an additional fee to the license applicants because there is staff time and resources that are involved in this. And I wasn't in favor of the policy then, and I'm still not, so I'm happy to revisit it.
Director Dahl, do you have anything further? No? Okay. Moving on. Public considerations. None. Notice of motions. None. Chair's report. Yes. Pardon me? Yes. So this will be brief. Committee of the whole meeting, August 14th. How's everybody's calendar? August 14th. You're good? So raise your hands if you're good, please. 4? Okay, August 14th is not going to work. Do we have an alternative date?
I think, because I thought that one might work, I will revisit that and do
Get
some
back.
kind of poll or connect
Okay.
with the various municipalities and see what may work.
How about in the fall sometime when we're not so busy?
Yeah, that sounds, well, if it's not going to be August, that's going to be the fall for sure, so.
Director Davis.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. My preference is that it ties in with one of our regular meeting days, if that's at all possible.
The only issue with that is committee of the whole, kind of the intent of that is when we're going to have a subject matter that would, I'd say, dominate a board meeting, we pull it aside and have a committee of the whole meeting. If we have it on the same day of the board meeting, which we generally have Strathcona Gardens and another committee meeting, and throw a committee of the whole meeting, that I think that consumes too much of the day. So that's why we were looking for an alternate day.
Okay, my preference is not to be on the 14th.
Okay, 14th is out, and we'll connect with everybody in a different manner.
Okay, thank you very much. Committee Chair report. None. Reports. Sorry,
Okay, no, go ahead.
I'm good. Okay,
Are you not doing the minutes of the regular committee chair?
oh, that the minutes of the electoral area service committees held on July 10th, 2024 be received.
So moved.
Second. Okay, we have Director Wally and Director Von Esch. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Staff report, Surge Narrows Marine Revitalization Project. That the report from the CAO be received.
Move receipt.
Director Mawini,
Second.
Director Von Esch, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. And B, that the application submitted for Crown land tender over District Lot 312, Saybrook District surrounding area to accommodate Surge Narrows Marine Revitalization Project infrastructure.
So moved.
Director Mawini, Director Wally. Go ahead, Director Chapman.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to staff. Do we have a good handle on this project now? I mean, with this modification, are we going to be okay with the size of the lease and the dock and so forth?
Yeah, no, if I may, Mr. Chair, I think with there's the two wharves involved with this and the Area C Parks issue and this Crown land tenure, we've combined them all. I think we're in good shape, yeah.
All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Transport Canada, divested wharves. The report from the CAO be received.
Move receipt. Second.
Director Winnie, Director Goulburn. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. B, that the chair and the corporate officer be authorized to execute an amendment agreement with Transport Canada to extend the deadline use of funding for Port Neville, Surge Narrows, and Owen Bay Wharf facilities.
So moved.
Director Mawini,
Second.
Director Goulburn, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Director Von Esch.
Move that the report from the Chief Administrator Officer be received on the Cortez Island Wildfire Brigade.
So, second.
Director Colburn, second. Continue, please.
We have to vote on that first.
We do, sure. Why don't we vote on it first? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried.
I'll move that the regional district work with the Cortez Island Firefighting Association to obtain additional details, such as better defining the scope of the proposed service, and report back to the Electoral Area Services Committee.
Second.
Second was Director Mawini. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Short-term rentals, Outer Discovery Islands. Report
Move
from-
receipt of the report.
Thank you. Director Wally, discussion? Director Mawini?
Thank you, Chair. The short report that's attached to this item may not provide the complete context. So to ensure that the directors understand the reason for this report request, I want to share that Electoral Area C is over 10,000 square kilometers, and there are two separate zoning bylaws, the Quadra Island zoning bylaw and the Desolation Sound Rural Land Use bylaw. The province's Bill 35 has mandated certain changes regarding short-term rentals, including to ensure zoning bylaws define short-term rentals and indicate zones where they are or are not permitted to operate. So at the June board meeting, we gave first and second readings to a bylaw for the Quadra Island zoning bylaw and scheduled a public hearing. This request for report regarding short-term rentals is for those islands included in the Desolation Sound Rural Land Use bylaw. And I have heard from some Outer Discovery Islands residents who are interested in operating a short-term rental. And as the province is mandating change, I believe now is a good time to examine it. Thank you.
Okay, further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Did you want to do B, please?
I can move that a report be prepared regarding short-term rentals on the rural outer islands within Electoral Area C.
Director Wally, second. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Director Mawini?
I would move that the report, Quadra Island zoning bylaw revisions, be received from the Chief Administrative Officer.
Director Wally, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. B,
I will move that a revision bylaw be prepared for the board's consideration that would correct the error introduced to the Quadra Island zoning bylaw by bylaw number 317.
Second.
Director Von Esch, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Electoral Area D,
I'd like to move a receipt of the report from the Chief Administration Officer.
Director Wally, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried.
There's an option to that. I'd like to move option A. Did you read it? Yep. I'll just pull it up here. Option A, that a report be prepared to investigate options for providing animal control services within Electoral Area D.
Second.
Director Wally, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Wild Safe BC Educational Programming, the report from the CAO be received.
Move receipt.
Director Mawini,
Second.
Director Von Ash, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. B, that a report regarding the Regional District Support for Wild Safe BC Educational Programming and prepared consideration by Electoral Area Service Committee.
So moved.
Director Mawini,
Second.
Director Rice, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Okay, amenity cost charges and development cost charges. The report from the CAO be received.
So
Move
moved.
receipt.
Second.
Director Colburn, second. Discussion? Director Von Esch?
I just want to note that I do have an amendment to the next motion.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. B, Did you want to read B as well, Director Von Esch?
Yeah, it's just coming up on the screen so folks can see it. Just a slight amendment for more clarity. I think that sort of more aligned with what we were looking for. Move that a report be prepared for further consideration that investigates development cost charges for electoral area D and an amenity contribution policy for electoral areas B and C.
Director Wally, second. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Okay, Director Wally, do you want to take this one?
Backup generator, Canberra Research and Rescue Hall, that the report from the CEO be received.
Move receipt.
Second.
Discussion? Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried.
Move that the contract for the Canberra Research and Rescue Hall generator installation be awarded to Osprey Electric and that the chair and corporate officer be authorized to execute the contract.
Second.
Second.
Director Von Esch was second. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Grant aid, review of policy and guides, report from the CAO be received.
Move receipt.
Director Mawhinney,
Second.
Director Von Esch, discussion. We got option A or B. Director Mawhinney?
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to staff for the report. I appreciate the clarity and the form which are currently available to applicants, and I'm satisfied with the current model. I think that the proposed policy that is included as a draft from 2021, I think, does not benefit Area C constituents as it would deny applications for support with insurance fees, which can be a significant item for small organizations. And the policy also denies support for groups which are not registered not-for-profits. Apart from the repercussions this could create in Area C, it made me wonder about more loosely organized events looking for support, such as the Campbell River Canada Day group, which we supported with fireworks funding earlier this year. So I'm supportive of option B, leaving the grant and aid working as it currently is. Thank you.
Okay. Do you want to do a motion on B?
Do you call the question first? Mr.
Still
Chair?
call the question. Thank you. Pardon me? Director Sinnott? Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried.
Move option B.
Are you going to read option B out loud?
Your mic is already on.
I'll read it out loud, sure. That the matter of policy for considering grants and aid not be pursued at this time.
Second.
Discussion. Director Sinnott.
Yes, thank you. The City of Camp River's got a substantial confusion in terms of how much money we're spending for various things like permissive tax exemptions, grants and aids, and where we sit relative to other communities, including the funding source. Right now, it's tied to the percentage of revenue of the city's tax base, which continue means it's growing, which I don't know if that's an acceptable use of tax dollars. In our current policy, do we have it tied to a particular funding amount, or is it just set at each budget amount?
If I may, Mr. Chair, it's set by the A directors at the one-on-one meetings, so we don't have any real policy in terms of it or any guidelines or any limitations on the amount of money set in the budget.
Correct. So in addition, I know that there's sensitivities about granting money to businesses because of the limitations under our governing legislation. So we have to be very careful about where you're sending the money. And I know we've had a few sort of difficult situations where we've had to find alternate funding sources. In addition, at the city, we have sort of the discussion of how much staff time, how much our time is being put into small amounts, how much you can defer down to staff, how much we want to align the granting to our actual strategic priorities set by the board or set by the EAs separately, and how we can make sure that we're actually achieving our goals and accounting for that. I think the current policy does need work, so I will vote against the amendment. I would rather we do an investigation, subject to staff capacity and timeframes that they can report back to us.
Okay. So any further discussion? All in favor of option B? Okay, we have 3 opposed. Director Colburn, Kerr, Senate, Dole, Lanyon. The motion is defeated. You got all the names?
I'll make a motion that policy be brought forward for further consideration by the board and perhaps a report beforehand, or maybe we do it in a committee of the whole session to have a discussion of what the objectives are of such a policy before staff go to a great amount of work.
Second.
Okay, further discussion? All in favor? Sorry, I'm sorry, Director Mawhinney, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I think maybe when the staff is considering the report, it would be relevant to include the fact that there are 2 separate grant and aid pots, or actually 5, because each electoral area organizes or you know, like budgets for their own grant and aid, depending on the needs of their electoral area, but we also have regional grant and aid funding. And I think maybe that's where we need to also concentrate. So maybe clarifying that in the report, that there are those 2 separate, and maybe they need to have separate policies, I'm not sure.
The funding comes from different sources, but ultimately, I would say the liability or the consequences of what Director Sinnott is talking about lies with the board. So I'm not sure that the board wants to. If they want, happy to do that. But again, that's up to the board.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? 1 opposed, 2 opposed, 3 opposed. Okay, Director Mawhinney, Director Wally. Okay, the motion is carried. Thank you. Number 11, disposition of pending bylaws. The report from the CAO be received.
So moved.
Director Colburn, Director Mawhinney. Discussion. Did you have something?
No, Tom doesn't.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the report lists, or highlights rather, those bylaws that have been actioned by the board in the past, and as a consequence, since they're currently in limbo, they have to be fed and clothed forever until the board decides whether it wishes to pass them or to defeat them. So the intent is to ask the board if you wish us to bring those back with explanation, then the board can decide whether it wishes to carry on with any of those bylaws or not.
Director Wally.
I have a question for Mr. Yates on 127, amend land use planning service. That was a bylaw that the board approved, but the inspector of municipalities refused to sign. I wondered if there's been a change of staff since those days?
There may well have been, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure there'd be much to be gained by resubmitting it for approval. We could certainly try that, but I don't hold out much hope.
Would there be any harm in asking?
It's just a matter of staff time to do it.
Could we ask, please?
If the board makes that resolution, we'd be happy to do that.
Oh, okay. We'll wait till it comes back.
Okay, any further discussion? Still on 13A. All in favor? Oh, sorry, Director Mawhinney.
Thank you, Chair. Just that the list has a very long list, and then we're only considering visiting or revisiting the ones which are highlighted. And I was wondering if staff could provide context for, you know, I read the policy and it sounded like we were meant to be dealing with everything that was outstanding, and there's quite a few that are not highlighted. So if what the rationale for that was.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, the report distinguishes between bylaws that have been actioned by the board, meaning they've had at least first reading, and those that have never been actioned by the board, which really are not the best or the utmost concern to staff anyways. If the board wishes us to bring all of them back for review, we can certainly do that.
Any further discussion? Director Sinnott.
So so I understand, we have the electoral system where we get elected, and all the other work that sits there just carries over indefinitely, even if it had not even been brought in for first reading. Is it possible under governing legislation that we can have things die off and be brought back to the newly elected boards? Or is this just a function of the acts that these stay until they're dealt with?
Mr. Chairman, if the board wishes to look at an amendment to its procedure bylaw, that can be brought into effect. If the board wishes to have certain bylaws just die on the vine for inactivity over a certain period, that can happen. But right now, there is nothing to suggest that the staff have any ability to assume that any bylaw that has been brought to the board is automatically going to be extinguished or expire after a period of time.
Any further discussion? Director Van Esch?
Yeah, I guess I'm confused, like for number 309, adopt new Cortez Island zoning bylaw. This was a zoning bylaw that was rejected at the time. We're going through a zoning bylaw review process now to create and update our bylaws. Why would we go back and look at this one that was not satisfactory at the time when we're already going through a process of creating a new one?
Mr. Chairman, I could perhaps answer that. In talking to the Director of Planning, I believe the intent is to bring that bylaw back to the board to be not resurrected, but to be continued, that process. So I don't pretend to know all the ins and outs of that, but that would be an example where the board might say, no, we want to keep this bylaw alive because we're going to still deal with it. Perhaps. I don't know what the board's reaction to that might be, but that's what I'm told.
Director Lyon?
Thank you, Chair. So my inclination here is I didn't know these existed. I don't feel like we're missing anything. I would rather kill them all. And then, unless there's a special request from another director to bring back that older version. But I think we should be minimizing the number of rules that we have and responding to, like rationally, to issues that currently exist or that we could reasonably foresee. But I don't have any reason to look at these things again unless staff has, or another director has a recommendation otherwise.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, I think that staff may have reason to bring the unhighlighted ones forward. So again, our recommendation is just to remove the highlighted ones, as yes, it's not the directors, it's staff that may have intention of bringing them forward for amendment.
Great. Further discussion?
Sorry, just to clarify there, you're saying the highlighted ones are not being brought forward or being brought forward?
I apologize for the confusion. The motion that we were hoping for is that the highlighted ones are being addressed in the motion.
So brought forward again?
No, removed.
Okay, great. Yeah, I support that.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we're still on A, which is simply receipt. And just so we're clear, if the board agrees, we would bring back the bylaws that are highlighted for the board to say, kill it or adopt it, rather than just leave it on the shelf forever and a day. That's the intent, so.
So the highlighted ones, if you pass the motion that's before you, we'll bring them forward with the motions that they be extinguished. And then they will be dead to all of us.
Director Morwini for the last comment.
Thank you, Chair. I just noticed that some of them that are not highlighted, like for instance, amending the electoral area D official community plan. I believe that also recently just happened. They have a brand new one that was in 2009, and now in 2023, I believe, is when they passed their new official community plan bylaw. So wouldn't it make sense to get rid of some of these things which have outlived their usefulness?
Mr. Chairman, staff would agree. That's why it's not highlighted, to be brought back to the board. As far as we're concerned, it's a bylaw that never went to the board and never was actioned by the board. There's no reason to bring it back to the board to have clarity brought in terms of what the future of that bylaw might be. So it's not on the list to be coming back to the board if the board wants us to go that route.
Okay. Director Senate.
Yes, thank you. So just so I understand, the stuff that sort of staff marked as work that's sitting in abeyance, there's some value to staff to have it, and it's been presented publicly at some point, so there's a public record that could be requested. Is that what my understanding is? And we just don't need to worry about it because it's never been brought for board work.
Essentially, that is correct. All the bylaws that are listed but not highlighted, really do not believe there's any reason for them to come to the board unless the board wishes us to do that. But from an administrative point of view, there's really no reason to bother the board with those bylaws.
Okay, still on A. Director Mawhinney.
Thank you. And that's just because the policy talks about pending bylaws, and it identifies or defines a pending bylaw as one which has been assigned a unique identification number. So the
Mr.
policy
Chair,
would
I
seem-
apologize for the confusion. Our intent was to bring these highlighted bylaws forward to identify them to ultimately be deleted. The presentation clearly failed, but it's just the highlighted. We want to clear them from the decks. There's no need for further interpretation of the other bylaws that we presented. That was clearly a mistake.
Okay, on A, all in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. B,
I'll make a motion that the bylaws shown highlighted in the June 17th, 2024 report from the Chief Administration Officer be brought forward for further consideration by the board, and that staff prepare a report for a procedural bylaw change so we don't have to do this again.
Second.
and make sure you put, so we don't have to do this again. That was Director Rice, second. For discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Okay, 12, Community Works Fund, gas tax agreement. The report from CAO be received.
Move receipt.
Director Colburn. Director Mawhinney, discussion.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, Director Sinnott had probably an unintentional segue to this report, but two things in that. There's a new Community Works agreement that's been sent to us. In order for us to get the gas tax funding, we have to sign the agreement, so that's one of the motions in front of you. And because the board, this board for the most part, has not seen the existing gas tax allocation policy, it's my recommendation that we'll bring that to the board and update them and make them aware of what that allocation policy is.
Director Sinnott.
Yes, thank you. As we receive gas tax and presumably we move to electrification of vehicles, and there's a potential change in the way we have to do cost recovery for our road infrastructure and replace that gas tax, has there been any discussion that staff are aware of what we may be looking at to do that?
If I may, Mr. Chair, how we're going to come up with funding for that?
Well, this is a very long agreement.
Yes.
And if we don't have another agreement that covers off the declining revenues, but the raising costs and maintaining infrastructure, I'm thinking we've got a missing piece over
Right.
the long term.
You're likely correct there, and I think that's a discussion at UBCM and FCM with our MPs and MLAs, because as this works, the feds in the province create this agreement. It's a 10-year agreement, and UBCM administers it, and then the funds come to us. So we don't have a lot, if any, input other than at opportunities at UBCM and FCM and engaging with the MLAs and the MPs. So it's a good question. However, we have very little, if any, input into this agreement or how it's going to be, funded, if you will, because the theory of it is it's being funded from gas tax revenues, and in theory, if there's electrification, those revenues decline. So how is the funding gap going to be made up? We're not party to those conversations, certainly. We're just all given the agreement and say, sign this thing if you want your money.
Director Sinnott.
Yeah, so the concern I have is finding out, there must be people that are addressing this, and I was talking to some people that are in the logging industry because they have to remit gas tax equivalents for their marked gas that they use on the industrial roads versus the government-provided roads. And they had mentioned to me that there are now systems in place where people are actually getting mileages from people. And since we have a monopoly insurance company, it might be worthwhile being ahead of the curve and perhaps thinking about this in terms of the future. So you actually get people to tell you how much they're driving, and then you charge them. And I don't know whether we have the ability to do such a type of taxation or service. So that would be interesting, whether that's within the power of our regional district or local governments.
Yeah, well, I mean, we could certainly look into that. I mean, whether we create a service that, I mean, we could create almost any service, whether the intention of it then would be collect revenues to make up for gas tax that are going to decline. Yeah, we could certainly look into that. But as far as this goes, you know, you got to blind faith hope that they've taken these things into consideration, you know, whether they have or not, and considered it in the amount of allocations that they're providing. I don't see a whole lot of change in this agreement compared to the last one, other than they seem to become more and more liberal with the things you can spend the money on.
Any further discussion? Okay, we're still on A. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. B, that the chair and the corporate officer be authorized, to execute the 2024 the Community Works Fund Agreement on behalf of the Regional District.
So moved.
Second.
Director Senate, Director Mawhinney, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. C, that a full analysis of the new Community Works Fund Agreement and the Regional District Gas Tax Allocation Policy be prepared for the board's consideration.
So moved.
Director Chapman. Sorry?
Second.
There we go. Sorry, I didn't recognize your voice for a second there. Director Dahl, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Director Rice.
Like to move receipt that the report from the Chief Administration Officer be received.
Discussion?
So, Mr. Chair, if I can, just based on the earlier discussion, we provide alternatives, one that is adhere to the policy, and one is, as we traditionally have done, provide no comment. So if there's an issue about timeliness of it, we have the policy, but this still gives you the option to skip that.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? See none carried. Go ahead, Director Rice.
Like to move option B. And that option is that the regional district declined to comment on the 3 liquor license applications submitted by Shelter Point Distillery.
Second.
Director Senate, discussion. All in favor? No, discussion? Director Mawhinney.
Thank you, Chair. You know, just last month, I think it was, the board undertook a community consultation process, which was for the Quad Island Golf Club when they were applying to amend their license. And these license applications seem to be 3 new areas, not an amendment. I'm not clear from the application form because there does seem to be some information that is missing. But, you know, I personally think that we have a new policy and which suggests that the consultation could take the form of surveys or public meetings or opinion referendums. And I think that providing an option for neighbors and Area D constituents to weigh in could provide reasonable understanding for the board.
Okay, further discussion? On 13, go ahead, Director Rice.
The reason why I want to move option B is that, like I said, I did have a chit chat with Shelter Point. These applications were put in pre-COVID. They're still waiting for them. They're quite critical to their business plans. They were very concerned that even, you know, anything to further hold it up would hold them up in their business plans. So I still hold by the fact that I would like to move option B. Thank you.
Director Wally.
Yeah, I agree with Director Rice, but I just want to point out to the board that it's apparent to the constituents how unfair it is to require Quadra to have public consultation for a mere amendment to a bylaw or to a license that already exists. Then for Area D, who wants 3 brand new ones, say, oh, who cares? So I agree that, yes, we shouldn't have a comment, but it should be consistent for all directors, not just a few favorites.
Further discussion? Okay, we're on option B. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Vancouver Island Economic Alliance Summit. May the report from the CEO be received.
So moved.
Mr. Chair, if I may, the reason I put this on is last year we had a significant contingent go to the Vancouver Island Economic Alliance, and that one of the 2 days happens on our board day. It's a meeting that we have in October. We're one meeting a month, and we'll likely have a substantial finance budget report at that meeting. So I wanted to put an option down either, I don't know how many are going, so maybe a poll of the group if a large contingent is going. Either alternates come or we reschedule the date. And Wednesday seems to be the best day as it's a traditional SRD for board or committee meeting days. So I put that in option. And also, there isn't many alternatives to other than October 30th if the board wants to look at another day. So just curious to know if several are going. Do we want to reschedule, or are folks going to send their alternates?
Okay, so show of hands on who's going. All of City Campbell River's going? Okay.
Sorry, what was it?
Still in receipt?
Can they send alternates?
I guess they don't have any if they're all going.
I think we pay for ourselves as the city,
No,
or,
no, she said, can you send alternates?
oh, alternates
But
here. Oh, we only have two, and they're going to go too.
They're going to go. So considering Campbell River is 5 of 14 here, it may be an option for the board to switch the date to the 30th, if that works.
Okay, we're still on receipt of 14. So all in favor of receipt? Those opposed? None, motion is carried. So now we go back to A or B.
I'll move option B, that the schedule of the October meeting of the regional board remain unchanged.
Second?
If it remains unchanged, then we don't have Campbell River, correct? So we still have quorum? Okay. Or do we move it to the, okay. B is on the table. Further discussion? All in favor of B? Opposed? All of Campbell River and myself. 6.
6 opposed, and we have 13.
So the motion is carried. Opposed, hold your hands up higher, please. Slowly turn to the left, yeah.
Six opposed.
Make sure you're not at FIEA.
6 opposed, so it's defeated.
No, we got 13. Yeah, we got 13.
13.
Passes.
So it's defeated or it passes?
Passes.
It passes. 6 opposed. Okay, so it's B.
Pardon me? Gold River and Tassus. We're 14 as a group. The only one that I know is missing is the Cayuga First Nation. So that's 14. It's 13 of 14.
We've got 4 and 2, that's 6.
Sorry?
We have 4 members here that are in favor, and 2 online that are in favor, that's 6.
Well, if you don't raise your hand, you're in favor. So we had 6 opposed. We had the 5 from Campbell River, Director Baker, and those were opposed.
You're opposed as well?
Oh,
Okay, right.
oh, sorry. Then, okay, then that's 7 of 13. Okay. Okay.
Okay,
So
let's
that's-
clear this up. Okay, for those opposed, yeah, stand and turn to your left. Okay, no, for those opposed, please raise your hand up and keep it up. Everybody's hand. Okay,
Okay, that's 7. So that motion is defeated.
okay, motion's defeated.
I'll make a motion that option A, that the schedule for the October meeting of the regional board be changed from October 23rd to October 30th.
Second.
Director Chapman, discussion. Director Dahl.
Could we add the 16th? So there's an option for either the 30th or the 16th.
I'm amenable to that amendment.
I agree.
Yeah. Doesn't bother me. We're here every day. So I think, I don't know if anyone wants to commit, look at their calendars right now and commit to that, or sounds like Campbell River is good for the 16th.
What are the dates again?
16th or the 30th.
What is the 16th?
I can't make it on the 15th.
Both Wednesdays.
It's a Wednesday.
Oh, 16th. 1/6. 16th.
Yeah, that should be fine for me. Go ahead.
Not that it really matters, but the reason we didn't have the 16th is because we stagger the agendas for the EASC and the other committee meetings, and it made it a little more challenging for staff. Not that that's a deal breaker at all, but if the 16th is preferred, we can certainly make that happen.
Let's pick a date.
30th.
I think the 30th is best.
The 30th is best?
I think Campbell River's indifferent, so it depends on the other people.
30th it is.
30th it is. Okay, that was easy.
Call the question
Wait,
for the 30th?
I have a question, though. Does that amendment still stand then, the 5th, the 16th, or the 30th, or are we going straight with the 30th?
I think we're going to re-amend, if friendly, to the 30th and then have the vote on that.
Second that.
Just wanted to know what I was voting.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Okay. Director Von Esch.
I'll move that the report from the Chief Administrative Officer be received for bylaw number 509, Cortes Island bulk water regulation.
Second.
Director Mooney, discussion.
Mr. Chair, if I may, for those that didn't read it, the reason I'm going to highlight it, because it's a little bit unusual, staff, when we write bylaws, we write them based on our knowledge, experience. Sometimes we, depending on the issue, we consult with legal counsel. We present the bylaws to the committees and the boards. On this particular one, Director Von Esch has excluded what I would consider a significant portion of that bylaw and rewritten it. So for those of you that didn't read or don't understand, this is a bylaw that was amended by Director Von Esch.
Okay, still on receipt. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. B, Director Von Esch.
I move that bylaw number 509, being a bylaw to amend the zoning regulations applicable to Cortes Island, be now introduced and read a first time.
Director Wally, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried.
I'll move that clauses 1 and 2 of paragraph C of the section 303 prohibited uses be deleted.
Director Wally, discussion. Director Colburn?
It just gives me great pause that the recommendation to remove these clauses deals with human safety, health and safety. I understand simplifying and making things easier for residents, but when it comes to health and safety, I think that's an issue that puts us in liability.
Director Dahl?
I wanted to make a comment about this and the next item on the agenda. They both relate to water.
Yeah.
My comment was I found it interesting when I was reading that there will be no means for selling water. But at the same time, I know that a truck hauls large quantities of water currently from Courtney to both Quadra and Cortez. So I thought it was interesting that they would be forcing their members, residents of both islands, to buy water that has to be trucked there if they had water capacity on the islands that could be distributed to their residents there without having to have a large truck packing it back and forth and taking up space on the ferry. I just found it interesting that those two things are both happening at the same time.
Further discussion? Director Chapman?
Thank you, Chair. In recognizing this is an electoral area issue and only electoral areas are going to be voting on this, I'd like to just comment that if you're trying to restrict the sale of water, I don't think you want to do the zoning because do it through zoning because there's nothing stopping from someone from taking the water for free. So if you're trying to restrict the sale of water, I think that's a separate issue, not through, and won't be, I don't think it can be accomplished through zoning bylaw.
So if I can, Mr. Chair, so I think the impetus of this was a few years ago when I want to say business person and property owner in Merville was attempting to drill a well on their property and bottle water. Because we have limited authority over that, the one land use authority we had was to limit their ability to bottle because we don't license extraction, right? We don't permit that. So the bylaw would limit the ability to bottle water on the property. That's because that is our only land use authority. We can't stop someone from drilling a well or pumping water. We have no, regulatory authority in there. But we would have the ability to limit the land use to prohibit them from bottling water on the property.
If I could follow up, Chair. Thank you for the comment. How are you going to stop people from bottling water on their property? I think bottle for resale.
Yes.
So, but you could bottle water not for resale.
Yeah, I mean, presumably, if you had a well on your property and as many of you probably do, and you wanted to bottle it for your own consumption or give it to your friends, I suppose, yeah, you could. But I think the intent was to commercially prohibit the sale of it. And so pumping water out of a well on your property, bottling it and selling it, and that water going off island. The directors, I believe, thought is that we don't like that plan. What authority do we have that would prohibit someone from drilling a well, bottling the water and selling it and it moving off site? And so when the CVRD went through that with Merville, the only regulatory tool we had was to prohibit the bottling and selling of it, as that would be an important process in that, and eliminating that would take away the other issues. That was the thought.
Okay, Director Sinnott.
So I'm assuming for marine sales, if someone comes up with a vessel and is at a dock and someone wants to sell them water potable for that, that's a permitted use under the exemptions. And then further, the intention is to protect the aquifers. from what I gather. So if someone was smart enough to get a whole bunch of water trucked over to then resell or bottle, that's still prohibiting that action as well, no matter where the water comes from. So are we actually getting to what we want to do in terms of the action, which is protecting the aquifers? On the other hand, you mentioned that this is a director amended bylaw, which is fine. I mean, I understand that. Was there legal concerns that as a group, as the higher level SRD board, we should be aware of?
Well, I think the CBRD was the leader in that, as the Merville property was the impetus of this bottling water, and we're following in the footsteps of the council that they received and what they exercised there. There's also two issues, and I don't mean to confuse it, is that in the update of this bylaw, we are obligated to update portions of the bylaw that are old, antiquated, and that is where the prohibited use of the dwellings, if you will, the amendments that Director Von Esch has taken out of it. So they're related in the bylaw, but they're not related to water bottling. So there are two issues within the same bylaw. One is an update to the bylaw as it is being amended, and the rest of the bylaw is in regards to water bottling.
Director Mawhinney.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to speak to something that Director Dahl mentioned, which was the trucks coming over to Quadra and Cortez with potable water. And I think that is, it's coming from Courtney, and the reason for that is because it is potable. And you can take water from a well on Quadra and put it in another well, but it's not guaranteed to be potable because it's not tested like the water that is in Courtney. So if water comes from another source, it's not considered water that you could put in your well for drinking. And I think that will likely, if you read the bylaw, you will see that based on community feedback, because we did go to a public information meeting on Quadra about this in February, and there was some concern about the ability for water sharing, and it was added by staff that bulk water sales specifically excludes the receipt of water by parcels of land where supplemental water is required to enable private, domestic, agricultural, commercial consumption as permitted by zoning. So people are still going to be allowed to, if you want to call it share water, but the potable water is and has come from Courtney for a long time for that specific reason, because it's clean.
Director Dahl.
Well, if the water is not potable or drinkable, who would bottle it?
I don't know, but that is for others to decide. Who permits your license of your well and your drilling of it. You're absolutely right. It's just not our bailiwick. So those are certainly other issues. We were only focusing on what land use authority we could exercise to prohibit the bottling and selling of the water.
Director Wally.
Yeah, just to comment on Director Dahl's comments there. I don't think the issue is the water isn't potable. It's that it hasn't been tested and isn't legally potable. It may well be potable, be absolutely nothing wrong with it. People have been drinking it for centuries, but that doesn't mean you can legally sell it.
Okay, still on C. Director Colburn.
Just a quick question. We were talking about like bylaws that are supplemental of provincial laws of other laws. There are our bylaws. What kind of, where would the legal, if there was to be any kind of legal issue come out of this about health and safety, about the habitability of structures, where would that dollar come from for us to deal with that legal?
Well, I think
opinion?
it would be through the Ministry of Health or Ministry of Environment, certainly not us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Further discussion on C. Director Senate.
I think we're ultra vires our jurisdiction. I think Director Colburn is right. We're trying to use a zoning bylaw to control water in the provincial jurisdiction, but see what happens, I guess. I'm not voting for it, so you guys, up to you, yay, but it could affect us too as a whole.
Director Mawhinney.
Thank you. The reason for me that these bylaws are important is because the province controls water license extraction. And there is no tool for local government to even have a public hearing and ask the community if they think that this use is a good one or not. There may be reasons why it is a good idea, and the community would be able to weigh in. So if we have this bylaw in place, then we have the opportunity for a public hearing when an application comes forward because they want to put in a, I don't know, bulk water processing plant or something.
We are subordinate government. It's up to the province to decide what they give us for power. It's the province's decision, not ours.
Okay, so on C. Director Chapman.
Sorry, Chair, I just wanted to make a note that voting on this issue is only for electoral areas.
On C. Electoral areas only. All in favor? Opposed? None. Motion is carried.
I'd like to move that bylaw number 509 be given second reading as amended.
Second.
Director Mawhinney, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Oh,
I'm just curious if electoral areas together vote a bylaw in that causes the board to have legal liability. Not saying that's a strong factor here. What does the rest of the board have as a recourse in order to stop that from happening?
Well, Mr. Chairman, first of all, if there was legal action, that's not me, by the way. If there was legal action commenced, then the board would obviously want to defend the regional district, and the cost of that defense would be borne by the electoral areas. So I'm not sure if that's responding to your question.
It does, yeah. So in other words, the legal cost of responding to a legal issue for an electoral area bylaw would be borne by the electoral areas themselves as a group or individually? Yeah, okay. Okay.
However, the legal action would come against the board as a whole. Thank you.
okay, Director Von Esch.
I'd like to move that the public hearing for bylaw number 509 be waived in accordance with section 464 of the Local Government Act.
Do I have a second? Director
Second.
Rice, discussion? All in favor? Oh, sorry, Director Sinnott.
It's ironic that the point was to have public input, but you don't want public input on this. That's my comment.
Sorry, can you explain that?
Director Mawhinney suggested that she wanted public input from the community on the preservation of water, and this was a method to ensure that. But on this one, there's no public hearing. So I would encourage you to actually go to your community.
I'd open to input from staff on this one.
Well, we have two bylaws that are the same for different areas, and one is waiving a public hearing, which is an option, and the next one on Quadra is to hold a public hearing, so.
Is item C on the floor, Mr. Chair?
I'm sorry?
Is item C on the floor?
Item C, no.
We already passed it.
Item E.
We're on B?
E. Item E. Further discussion? Director Rice?
And I could be wrong, but I thought that even without the public hearing, that this still has to get voters' approval so that it does sit for a bit of time collecting that approval?
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, if the board passes this resolution, then the regional district would be required to provide public notification through the newspaper and our website that the board would like to waive the public hearing, and any input or feedback received from the public related to that notice would in fact come back to the board prior to the board adopting the bylaw or considering adoption of the bylaw. So the board could theoretically change its mind if it wished to do that based on feedback, or it could decide to go ahead and adopt the bylaw without further ado.
sorry, just to clarify, Mr. Yates, so you're saying that there is opportunity for input, just not a public hearing?
Well, we are required to provide public notification, and of course, the public can respond in writing to the board and express its concerns or support or whatever, and that will all come back to the board.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'm comfortable moving forward without a public hearing on this. I feel confident about Cortez isn't generally in support of it. I've spoken with Klahoos First Nation. They're also in support of it. So I'm ready to move forward.
Okay, still on E. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Okay, Director Von Esch, no, sorry, I lied. Director Mawhinney.
Bylaw number 510, Quadra Island bulk water regulation, that the report from the Chief Administrative Officer be received.
Director Wally, discussion? Director Mawhinney?
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to share a couple of comments, especially, well, we have a fair number of Quadra folks in the audience today, and there's probably more listening in online. I wanted to say thank you for the letters and written submissions which were made at and following the public information meeting that are attached to this agenda item as 48 items of correspondence. I do wish I'd had the opportunity to read these while this draft bylaw was under discussion at the Electoral Area Services Committee table. Unfortunately, this weekend is the first time I've seen many of these unless they were directly emailed to me. Staff did receive the submissions at the public information meeting and have worked on the language of the bylaw to address some of the concerns that were raised at that meeting. Particularly, as we've discussed just now, there was a concern with permitting water to be shared or sold to other residents, and this has been updated in this updated draft bylaw. And there is another phrase in the draft bylaw which caused concern among some island residents. The phrase is, any use not expressly permitted in this bylaw is prohibited in every zone, and where a particular use is expressly permitted in one zone, such a use is prohibited in every zone where it is not expressly permitted. As has been explained to me, bylaws are by their nature restrictive, not permissive. The reason for including this is to make it clear to people perusing the zoning bylaw this fact, and that the zoning bylaw already expressly permits and prohibits actions in every zone. This or similar phrasing appears in many other bylaws across the province and within the SRD in both areas B and D. And having this general statement is preferable to an ever-expanding list of prohibited uses, which still doesn't entirely prevent a novel disruptive use, such as Bitcoin mining. If it appeared, we wouldn't be able to necessarily control it the way that we could if we have the aforementioned paragraph. So in February, we held a public information meeting. At that time, I had been told that because the bylaw was regulatory in nature, we were not able to go to a public hearing. That information has changed now, and we can have a public hearing. So there will be a public hearing on this bylaw, Wednesday, September 11th. And my last message is to the residents of the Outer Discovery Islands who have asked me when a bulk water regulation bylaw will be considered for the Desolation Sound Rural Land Use bylaw. Staff have stated they have a preference for completion of the Quadra Island bulk water regulation process before embarking on the same for a bylaw which covers Morel, Sonora, Reed, and Stewart Islands. I'm very hopeful this means that we will be looking at it in this calendar year. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, so still on receipt. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Go on with B, please.
I would like to move that bylaw number 510 be given second reading.
Director Wally, second. Discussion? All in favor? Sorry? Electoral areas only. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried.
I'll move C, that an in-person public hearing for bylaw number 510 be scheduled for 7 p.m. on Wednesday, September 11th, 2024 at the Quadra Island Community Centre located at 970 West Road, Quadra Island, BC, and that the holding of the public hearing be delegated to the Director for Electoral Area C.
Do I have a second? Director Wally, discussion? Electoral areas only, all in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried.
And I will move D, that the public hearing to consider bylaw number 564 be rescheduled to begin at 5:30 PM on Wednesday, September 11th, 2024.
Director Wally, discussion?
It's a 2-for-1.
All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Thank you. And bylaw number 535, 536, OCP, amendment and rezoning application, that the supplementary report from the CAO be received.
Move receipt.
Director Wally, discussion?
Mr. Chairman, if I may. So the purpose of the supplementary report is to convey to the board information from staff regarding the proposal currently being considered as part of this application. And just so the board is aware, this is perfectly legitimate, even though we've had questions from the public as to whether it's an appropriate thing to do. It is long-established law by the courts that it is quite acceptable, if not mandatory, that staff provide the board with the current information so they can come to the best decision possible with respect to any application.
Okay. Director Wally?
Yeah, I'll just make a comment on this, that I would expect from the residents of Quadra's point of view, after they have a public hearing in good faith, thinking that they had received current information, and then afterwards, that the public hearing closed, there is a further amendment, another offer on the table, in their point of view, I'm sure would seem unfair and inappropriate. So I personally am against receiving this report. I think that if that information was received, which is new information, it would recall or would require another public hearing, which I'm sure the community doesn't want. So I realize it's legal. I think it's inappropriate. That's my personal view on it.
Okay, anyone else? Director Mulwini?
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to Mr. Yates for explaining the process, because I will say that I've had quite a number of emails from folks and just questioning the process. So according to staff, it sounds like receiving this supplementary report is not considered new information, and therefore it will be okay to carry on with the process without having to strike a new public hearing.
Okay, still on A, on receipt, all in favor? Opposed? Director Wally opposed? You're opposed as well? And Mulwini? It's not defeated.
Oh, it's all there. I'm sorry.
Okay. B, that the report from the CAO be received.
I have a question on that, Chair, because I believe that we received this report at the June board meeting. So is it appropriate to receive it again?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I think that was deferred. When it came last meeting, I believe it was just simply deferred.
Yeah. Excuse me. Okay. So again, the report from the CEO be received.
I'll move receipt.
Second.
Director Mulwini, Director Raleigh, discussion. All in favor? That's everybody. Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Okay, and that the report for the public hearing bylaw 535 and 536 and all other related records be received.
Move receipt.
Second.
Director Colburn, second. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? So you have more to add? Please, go ahead.
I think this is the appropriate place to make my comments. And so see that there's a full gallery today. And I want to say that at over 500 submissions, the Shell-Inc. application had a huge amount of public feedback, and I've read every submission at least twice. Some folks provided multiple submissions, no doubt due to their passion on either side of this proposal. During my deliberations, I combined these multiple submissions and considered them as one. My accounting is that 73% are opposed and 27% are in favor. With this incredible volume of public input, clear themes emerged. Reasons the application has merit include the value of centrally located parks, the protection of special old growth, the opportunities for trails through the park, and an expansion of the trail network to connect neighborhoods. Adding 22 5-acre lots would add opportunities for more housing, expand the tax base, and provide well-paid construction jobs. Themes from those opposed to the application emerged as well. Water was mentioned by many. Concern with the carrying capacity of the island as climate change increases drought conditions. Mention of the recent staff report highlighting only a moderate chance of success for a water system in the Cove, which was contemplated without these potential additional aquifer users. Neighbors concerned with the potential effects on their wells and for protection of wetlands. Water is life. Many folks identified the island's need for a diversified development that affordable, attainable, and middle-class income housing needs to be contemplated and was not in this application. For me, these comments brought to mind the community value in Quadra's official community plan, which says a strong rural community that reflects a diversity of lifestyles and economics. The official community plan's silviculture designation was raised by many. Forest land is viewed as important to Quadra, providing green space, wildlife habitat and wildlife corridors, sporadic employment, and aquifer replenishing areas. Among the submissions, a number of people took the time to share that the community benefits to this proposal do not outweigh the drawbacks, and there are significant concerns with the precedent this application may set for other large, centrally located parcels. The submissions in their entirety appear to me an excellent starting point for a conversation about what we want to see in an updated official community plan, as well as perhaps the expectations of residents when it comes to amenity contributions on large development applications. To the applicants, Mr. and Mrs. Shell-Inc., I want to say thank you for the second attempt at meeting the community's desires, demonstrated by a 25% increase in community support over your previous application. Amongst the many submissions were several voices expressing concern for the forest and the potential parkland dedication if your application was unsuccessful. On behalf of these folks and the ancient trees in that remarkable ecosystem, I urge you not to pick up a chainsaw in haste. Being an elected person, I well know the truth of the adage, you can't make everyone happy. Today is definitely one of those days, as I will not be supporting third reading for this application. Thank you.
Okay, still on C. All in favor? Oh, Director Von Esch.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just adding on to the comments that Dr. Mahoney made. Obviously, a huge amount of public input, 733 pages on this report, and lots of passion on both sides. And you know, some of the biggest, it was strongly against approving this application. And you know, the themes that I certainly saw were water concerns, the infrastructure on the island, being able to hold more people, and really, what is this application going to do for housing for the people that most need it, that live on Quadra, the people that are providing the services that basically the average person. And you know, although I can see benefits to this application, and you know, there are folks that would agree with that. It seems like the vast majority of Quadra Island that participated in this process are against it. And I'm not going to be supporting it either. Thank you.
Director Wally.
I'll just add my comment to this, that I believe that where the reasons given by constituents are valid reasons, that the majority must prevail in a democracy. And in this case, the majority with the reasons that they had, which were valid reasons, are definitely opposed. So therefore, I am opposed as well.
Would anybody else like to? Okay. Again, on C, all in favor? Opposed? Okay, motion is carried. D, that bylaw 535 be given third reading.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? All opposed? We got 3 opposed. Yep. So the motion is defeated. Next, going to number 4.
Well, it's
Yeah,
defeated,
It's
so the
defeated,
rest
so
of
there's
the
no
motion.
point. No. So going to number 4.
We received the CO's report on the Port Neville Wharf divestiture.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion.
Point of order, do we not have to do third reading motion, or do they want to do on 536? We just did 535, so I don't know whether, for the record,
Well, third reading was not supported, so.
or 535, because it's separated out in the agenda.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I could, ideally, it would be recommended that the zoning amendment also be defeated. Otherwise, it becomes one of those bylaws that's just sitting at third reading forever until whatever.
Okay,
Okay, so just go to 535. Let's scroll back up.
okay, scroll back up.
Tom?
No, we're on E.
F.
F. I was going to say something.
Move that bylaw number 536 be given third reading.
Second.
Discussion. Electoral areas only. All in favor? Opposed? 3 opposed? The motion is carried. Defeated. Just seeing if you're paying attention. Just checking. Okay, now we can go to number 4.
With the CAO's report on the Port Neville Wharf divestiture.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. B, that bylaw 559, being Port Neville Waste Wharf, disposition agreement authorization, bylaw 224. I'm having a tough time today. Whew. Let's try that again. Bylaw 2024, now be reconsidered. Finally passed and adopted.
I'm declaring a conflict of interest for business reasons.
Second. Oh,
Sorry, folks, you're not allowed to leave until the end of the meeting. I'm just kidding. Just,
thank you for putting up with us.
You always want to do that, Mark.
I did, yeah.
They were prepared to.
You don't have a seconder for B?
I'll
second it.
I can second it. I had a comment, though.
Okay, on B, Director Wall.
I'd like to reconsider my
Mawhinney.
second.
Go ahead on comment.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I think that divesting the Port Neville Wharf to the Coetzee First Nation is positive and a win for the nation and for the residents of Area C and their wharves. So this is a great bylaw.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Number 5. Electoral Area B. Would you like to read that, please?
Move receipt of the report from the CAO.
Yep. Fu-
I'll second.
Okay, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. B, that the report in the public hearing 563 and all related reports be received.
So moved.
Second.
Director Goulburn, discussion?
I'd just like to point out for folks online or watching this later, basically what we're doing with this bylaw, up until now, short-term rentals have not been allowed on Cortez in any zone. And although there are lots of short-term rentals, this bylaw is really just catching up to the reality on the ground and allowing us to, following the community input from a survey, that we allow short-term rentals in all zones on Cortez. So really kind of catching up to what's already happening. The public hearing, we had 2 people show up. It hasn't been really been a controversial issue. The survey was pretty clear around people wanting short-term rentals. And just so folks know, the primary residence requirement for short-term rentals will be layered on top of this once it comes into effect in November.
Okay, still on B. Director Chapman.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question to Director Von Esch. Do you have enough water to support the additional people?
Well, yeah, it's getting tripped in from Courtney.
Thank you for the sarcastic comment, Director Chapman. Again, nothing's changing. People are already coming to Cortez. They have been coming for years. Airbnbs have been on Cortez. They've just been in violation of the zoning bylaws. So this zoning bylaw is really just catching up to what's already happening. So there won't be any difference in the amount of water that's drunk.
Go ahead, Director Chapman.
That raises an interesting question. Do we change our bylaws to make the unlawful use of property compliant, or do we enforce our bylaws? So I guess we're just going to change our bylaws to make the unlawful activity now lawful, correct? That's what we're doing?
I think, Airbnbs were a relatively new phenomenon when the bylaws were initially made. Bed and breakfast were sort of the standard as far as what people would stay for short-term rentals. So it's been a long time since the zoning bylaws have been updated on Cortez. So this is kind of just catching up to what's happening and also following the political will of the community based on surveys that both the SRD have done and surveys that myself and the Housing Society have done.
Director Mawhinney.
Thank you, Chair. And staff might be able to correct me if I get the bill number wrong, but to Director Chapman's comment, the reason that we're going through this right now is that we've had a bill, I believe it's Bill 35 from the province, which has mandated that all zoning bylaws define short-term rentals and create areas where they are or are not permitted. So because of that, that's why we're having to do this. It's coming from the province. It's not something that we just decided to do.
Okay, so all in favor?
No.
No?
I had one question for staff. In this process, was there an inventory of the number of short-term rentals in the area that are now going to be considered out of compliance, even because they're not in the primary residence? Do we know the impact of that? They might have been being used as short-term rentals and, non-compliant with zoning, period. But my understanding, just off the general discussion, was one of the reasons they were considered non-compliant is they're commercial operations, and they didn't have commercial zoning to operate from the point of view of a lot of local governments. So now that they're going to be in compliance if they're on a primary residence, do we know the numbers of those that are impacted in your area, Director Von Esch?
That was a question from your staff.
I don't think we have a number for you because, they're kind of off grid. They were not regulated by us and, we don't know who or how is running the B&B. So I don't think we would have a number for you.
I do have some comments. Housing report from a couple of years ago showed there's about 97 short-term rentals on Cortez, Airbnb type situations on Cortez. We haven't done an official survey, but based on the input reflections that I've received around opting into the primary residence requirement, it's like a handful of people that are being affected.
Okay, on B, all in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried.
Move that bylaw number 563 be given third reading.
Second.
electoral areas only. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion's carried. D,
Move that bylaw number 563, being Cortez Island zoning bylaw 2002, amendment number 34 be reconsidered, finally passed, and adopted.
Second.
discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Electoral area D, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move that the report from the Chief Administration Officer be received for bylaw number 565, Electoral Area D, short-term rentals.
Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. B,
Move recommendation B, that the report on the public hearing for bylaw number 565 and all related records be received.
Second.
that was a close tie. Director Colburn, okay. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. C,
Move recommendation C, that the bylaw number 565 be given third reading.
Second.
Director Colburn, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. All directors, pardon me, electoral directors only. D.
Move recommendation D, that bylaw number 565 be in Campbell River Area Zoning Bylaw 1991, amendment number 75 be reconsidered, finally passed and adopted.
Second.
Director Mawhinney, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Okay, then we go to number 7.
Move receipt of the report on the public library financing issue.
Second.
Director Chapman, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. B,
That bylaw number 567 being a bylaw to authorize entering into an agreement respecting financing between the SRD and the Municipal Finance Authority of BC be now introduced and read a first time.
Second.
Director Mawhinney, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. C,
That the rules be suspended and bylaw number 567 be given second and third readings.
Second.
discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. D,
That bylaw 567 being security issuing bylaw 2024 being reconsidered, finally passed and adopted.
Second.
Director Colburn, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Number 8. We'll let Director Rice take that one.
Certainly. I'd like to move recommendation that the report from the Chief Administration Officer be received for bylaw number 569, Strathcona Gardens temporary boring.
Second.
Discussion? Director Mawhinney.
Thank you, Chair. I have to say that I read this report and it gave me a few questions. So, and I'm new to understanding some of these terms. When I read the report, it sounded like the regional district will borrow the $64 million and hold the debt until the actual costs of the redevelopment are known, which could be a certain number of years until the construction is complete. Is that when the actual costs of the redevelopment are known, is when it's completed?
Yes, what you do is you short-term borrow while you're building the project, and not until you put the final nail in where you know the total cost, then you'll convert that to a long-term issue.
Okay, so thank you for that. I have a couple further questions. One of them is, how are the interest costs dealt with? Do they accrue? Because talks about them in the report, are they payable by the board or by the Strathcona Gardens Service?
They're paid for by the service, and there's different rates for short-term borrowing and long-term borrowing. So sometimes it's more advantageous to carry it short-term depending on the rates, or you'll want to convert it quicker to a long-term borrowing, depends on the interest climate out there. But it's paid for by the service.
Okay, thank you. And is there a chance that costs could escalate beyond the amount which has been authorized?
We can't spend beyond the amount that's authorized.
Great. So my final question was that I'm not really clear on what a debenture sale is, and I did Google it, but maybe you or the CFO could explain the process to us?
Mike can explain that better than I can.
Yeah, so as Dave alluded to, we temporarily borrow when we go to lock in those funds. MFA sells debentures to finance them on the public market, but it's just accounting speak for locking in. But it's actually MFA selling debentures on our behalf.
Okay. I don't even know what it is still.
Debenture is just a security they sell on the open market. So they take all the debt from all the regional districts, and they pool it up into a big pool, and then they go and they sell those debentures to the public. So that's where MFA gets the funds from.
Okay. Okay, I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you.
Okay, so we're still on number A, or pardon me, 8A, correct? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. B, Director Rice?
That bylaw number 569 being the bylaw to authorize temporary borrowing for financing improvements at the Strathcona Gardens pending the sale of debentures be now introduced and read a first time.
Director Chapman? Discussion? Director Wally?
Just a question, do we assume any liability whatsoever on this, or
Does who have liability?
do we assume liability by taking over the debt for Strathcona Gardens?
Well, the service does, like, they have the liability for that.
Okay.
Yeah. Just like anything else, yeah.
Just want to make sure. A lot of money.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. C,
That the rules be suspended and bylaw number 569 be given second and third reading.
Second?
Director Colburn? Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried.
And that bylaw number 569 being the Strathcona Gardens Temporary Borrowing Authorization Bylaw 2024 be now reconsidered, finally passed and adopted.
Director Wally, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Director Mawhinney.
Thank you, Chair. Bylaw number 570, Kwathiaski Cove sewer rates, that the report from the Chief Administrative Officer be received.
Director Wally, second. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. B,
Oh, that's me again. That bylaw number 570, being a bylaw to amend the rates charged for use of the Kwathiaski Cove sewer system, be now introduced and read first time.
do I have a second?
Second.
Director Von Esch. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. C,
That the rules be suspended and bylaws number 570 be given second and third readings.
Second.
Director Von Esch. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. D,
That bylaw number 570, being the Kwathiaski Cove Sewer Rates and Regulations Bylaw 2013, Amendment number 7, be reconsidered, finally passed and adopted.
Second.
Director Von Esch, discussion?
If I may, Chair?
You may.
Just for folks tuning in who are maybe wondering why there's going to be another sewer increase, well, this report that's attached to this item has a 2020 Class D estimate of a system costing over $3 million plus a 15% escalation of construction costs since then. A Class D estimate means there is a margin of error of plus or minus 50%. So roughly a new system which is required will cost a minimum of $3.5 million. The suggested possibility of a senior government grant of 73% leaves $1 million plus cost to 216 local users. And there is a capital reserve fund of less than $100,000, thankfully up from $25,000 in 2022. The numbers are all really challenging, and they highlight the huge issue of service infrastructure for small rural communities, a concern we will be bringing to our meeting with the Minister of Municipal Affairs at UBCM. I'm really hoping that increasing the sewer service rates by 3.5% doesn't create a hardship for folks this year and will help our Little Q Cove system to build the capital reserve to support the much-needed plant replacement. Thank you.
Hey, anyone else? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Correspondence.
I'd like to pull item number 1, please.
And 5.
Okay, so
I'd move 2 and 3 and 4 to 6 for receipt.
thank you. Do I have a second? Director Chapman, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Go ahead, Director Moini, for number 1.
Thank you, Chair. This is the Quadra Island Bulk Water Regulation correspondence from 48 or 49
Motion to
constituents.
receive,
Oh,
please.
sorry. Motion to receive the correspondence.
Director Wally, discussion? All in favor?
Oh, wait, I wanted to discuss it.
No, we're going to move on. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Thank you. This correspondence is from 49 constituents, and it arose from a board-sanctioned public information meeting which was held in February. After the public information meeting, the Electoral Areas Committee worked further on crafting the bylaw referred to in this correspondence, and yet none of this correspondence or comment forms which were filled out at the SRD meeting were shared with directors until this July agenda. So following receipt of this correspondence, I have a simple follow-up motion, if I may.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried.
And my motion is that correspondence addressed to directors or the board is shared with the board in a timely fashion.
Is there a second?
Can I make a friendly amendment? Okay, all right. I'll second.
Discussion?
Yeah, I guess friendly amendment rather than timely fashion, on the next meeting upon when it's received.
That's very fine with me. I was trying not to be too specific, but also recognizing that when this correspondence was received in February and this is July, that's quite a long
Right.
time.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may, when we receive correspondence, first of all, we bring correspondence to the board that's addressed to the board. People don't always know to address it to the board, so I have to use discretion, first of all, whether I believe it's being addressed to the board or not. With this, I timed the correspondence with bringing the bylaw forward. It's second reading, it's amendable at any time. It's not time sensitive in my mind. You have issues, for example, I received, if this motion passes, it's going to create other issues because on the Schelling proposal, I received correspondence addressed to the board that I cannot bring to the board because it would be constitute as additional information that you cannot do. So in my mind, the CO must be given liberty to bring correspondence when I feel it's appropriate, legal, and necessary.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And I really appreciate that. And it just, my motion really stems from, we held a public information meeting and people filled out forms. And I think that those constituents that were there had an expectation that when the director was going back to the committee table and working on the bylaw, that they would be able to access or read that information. And this wasn't the case in this point. And, we had first reading, the board was recognized, had recognized the bylaw. It was in process, the board sanctioned the public information meeting. And I just do feel that receiving the information earlier would have been helpful. And if you think that this motion is not appropriate because it's stretching into the territory which you need to have your own decision-making powers based on if it's going to affect a public hearing or not, I completely understand that. It certainly was surprising to see this all on the agenda this weekend.
Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, the motion is defeated. Okay, number 5. Receive, please.
Move receipt, the July 8th, 2024 request for financial assistance from CRFSS in partnership with Campbell River Early Years Council.
Can we have the IT department, please, down to the... Okay, on receipt of number 5. Who's the seconder?
I'll second that.
Thank you.
The reason I brought this forward, if I can speak to it, the reason I brought this forward is it's requesting a grant in aid. And I know, I would hope that they had gone to Campbell River as a funder as well. However, I think that for the area, I think that I'd like for us to consider making a contribution, understanding that, yes, that's a double dipping partially for Campbell River, but I do think that for the area, it provides a great service, especially what they're prescribing, which is an inventory of services. I know that a lot of people that maybe move to Campbell River don't know where things are, and so this would provide a really good service or a good resource.
And I believe, and staff, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the Campbell River Early Years Council came in as a delegation a month or two ago. Is that correct? And they presented?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, same organization. Yeah. So I really appreciated that presentation. I certainly support Director Colborne's wish to approve this grant and aid through the regional grant and aid.
All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried.
Subsequent then, that a grant may be given to the Campbell River Family Services Society and Campbell River Early Years Council. For $4,785.
Okay. Do I have a
Through the
second?
regional grants and aids.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Director Von Asch, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Okay. Should we take a half-hour break before we get back to the rest?
Take 5 minutes.
Q member, we're just about done.
And then my new business.
Or do you have 3 long ones?
2 short ones.
Yeah. 2 items under new business. Okay, so we have the members' report, Rural Island Housing. That the July 18, 2024 report from Director Morwini regarding rural and island housing be received.
Move receipt.
Second.
Director Wally, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Director Chapman's opposed. Management report, none. New business.
Excuse me, I have a,
Sorry?
there's a motion in the
Oh, I'm
director's
sorry. I nodded off. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So hopefully you folks had a chance to look at the report that I put together. It was a pretty short report, just highlighting the concern around supporting of rural island housing. And so I do have a motion that I'd like to put on the floor, whereas housing needs are critical in rural communities and coastal islands, and rural housing projects which have applied for BC Housing Support have not received it. Therefore, the SRD Board resolves to send a letter to the Premier and Minister of Housing calling on the province to consider creating a rural housing stream and supports to facilitate construction of projects suited with the unique constraints of rural housing.
Second.
Okay.
If I can, historically, when requests for letters of staff have been made, we write them and they don't exactly hit the mark of which the director has intended them to. So if this motion passes, I would suggest that staff collaborate with Director Mawhinney on the creation of it, because she wishes to have this letter written. I don't know what it should contain. If I don't collaborate with her, it's probably not going to say what she wants it to say.
Director Dahl.
I'm just wondering how many available developable lots there are on Quadra Island. I'm all for writing the letter, but I also was just here and listened to the conversation about the development for 22 new lots on Quadra. So the way that conversation went and the way every single one that I've watched in the last 6 years has gone, if the intent is to not develop land when someone or when the majority of people that speak are opposed, this letter is a waste of staff's time, because you will never, ever get 2/3 of the people to support development. So every single time we'll come back to the exact same thing. 2 out of every 3 will be opposed, and you will never have any development. So if you have no lots, you're not going to get any lots if that's going to be the rule you follow.
Director Lyon.
Yeah, I maybe should hear more from Director Mawhinney on how to reconcile the need for more housing with the unwillingness to make land available. And the concern is, this is just a small use of staff time, but it's a use of staff time, and I want to see it go to things that are going to actually go through.
Director Wally, then Director Von Esch.
Yeah, just remind the municipalities that the motion wasn't specific to Quadra Island. For all electoral areas. Maybe Quadra Island has a problem, doesn't mean the other 3 do.
Director Von Esch.
Yeah, just, speaking to the bigger issue, the trend from BC Housing was that they've put all their money into urban areas, which is great. We know we need housing in urban areas, but there's been a huge deficit, and there's a huge deficit in rural areas as well, and there hasn't been any funding going there. So this is just, I think, a call for support for making sure we get housing in rural places area as well. Addressing, the recent application and saying no to some applications. For me, the question is, is creating 22 waterfront properties going to create affordable housing? If I don't see how it is. I can understand how it's going to contribute to the economy. I can understand how it's going to create housing for certainly not the average person on Quadra who earns, $60,000 a year. But for the average person on Quadra to, I'm in support of development, but I'm also in support of thoughtful development that includes opportunities for affordable housing. And in this case, we're looking for, certainly on Cortez, and I think in other places too, in rural communities, we're looking for BC Housing to build public housing. So it's, difference between the private market and the public market. We can argue about the private market, but this is specifically around public housing, publicly owned housing.
Director Sinnott.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So Director Von Esch, it used to be that we want to manipulate the market, but I think if you follow the California Yes in My Backyard movement. They've come to the conclusion that all housing, all kinds, creates affordable housing, because what it does is it creates movement upwards and opens up lower levels. So every door adds to affordable housing. So that's a general concept. But when you talk about creating affordable housing models, do we even have a proponent or a piece of property that can manage the density on these rural areas, or even want to have that density? And that's a trade-off you guys are going to have to decide, because my impression is that you've got water issues, sewage disposal issues, and I don't know if you can do that kind of density, so you have to stick to what you're good at and decide what you want to be.
Yes, certainly for Cortez, we have a shovel-ready project. We have the land, we have the zoning, we put in an application to BC Housing 3 times, they said no.
Do you have a not-for-profit running it?
Yeah.
That's pretty unusual unless they don't have capacity or have never done it before.
They have done it before. They've built 10 seniors units already. They're looking to build 24 more units. So we're ready to go. And there are, as the report here states, that there are a bunch of shovel-ready rural community places that have gotten denied. And really, it's just speaking to the idea that, yes, we need funding in urban areas, but not all the funding should go there. We need funding in rural areas as well.
CAO?
Oh, I was just going to say, there's caveats to each development. The Rainbow Ridge development has high infrastructure costs, and I would say a relatively low density, and I think that's where they're challenged.
Director Lanyon, then Director Moini.
Sure. I would like to add to what Director Sinnott said. There's another very good source of information on trickle-down economics as it relates to housing within the Strong Town series of podcasts. And this has been studied extensively. And when you add higher-end properties, it does, people move up the chain and leave a gap at the bottom, inevitably. So there's almost a one-to-one conversion of, or creation of more affordable housing when you add housing to the top end that people can move up into. So I just want to dispel that. I don't want to hear that at this table unless you've done the research.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I would love to listen to the podcast and, understand the issue deeper. I know on Cortez, the higher end properties, the higher end waterfront properties that are bought are not creating affordable housing. I just see that in my own community. So, I'm sure there's places that it might, and maybe more so in urban areas. But in tourist communities like Cortez, like, Tofino and places like that, these places are bought up not by locals. And the issue that I want to address here is, like, how do we create affordable housing for locals?
I think something that could be added to that is, you can direct or give some guidance to developers when they come to you with projects, looking for the addition of accessory dwelling units as part of the, building scheme.
Yeah.
So, and I think a lot of, it's hard to speak about things as just I haven't seen. Like I think you have to look at what percentage of new development's going to have a rental suite in it, or a family suite. Because I think we just need more housing. Like it just relieves pressure everywhere.
Yeah.
And it might even be that someone from Campbell River moves over to Quadra to reside on the waterfront, but then leaves a gap here for someone else.
Right.
So I think we have to be really careful about restricting housing right now.
Yeah, and that's, I think, why we're going through a zoning bylaw review process and looking to really open up the private market to create more housing units. Yeah, appreciate that. Thanks.
So are we still running with Director Moini's motion? Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Okay. So, new business. We have Director Rice.
I've got 2 items. They're short. The first item is that of late I've been asked to explain to my constituents how the costs for the Campbell River Fire Protection is actually calculated on people's taxes. And what I've been able to glean so far is that basically the calculation is a portion of the actual expense. And I use the word actual carefully because that's not what the fire service agreement says. incurred by the city of Campbell River. It is then prorated by the SRD Fire Protection Area assessed value to the city's total net taxable values from BC assessment. Unfortunately, that doesn't help me out too much, so my motion is, can staff prepare a report for further discussion at the Electoral Area Service Committee? The report needs to include the actual math that was used from the past budget to determine Area D's contribution for the City of Campbell River Fire Protection Service Agreement.
My only, if I can, Mr. Chair, it's not a shared service, but it's a contract service. Would you care to bring it because it impacts Campbell River to the board?
I would still like it to have it talked at the Electoral Area Committee first.
I'll second that.
Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. We lost everybody online? They're there? Okay.
And I have one more motion, and this is for staff to prepare a report that shows the bulk water costs for 2021, 2022, 2023 for further discussion at the Electoral Area Service Committee. It would be useful for this report to show the water trends over those years. The reason I'm asking for this motion is, again, I don't know what those costs are.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Discussion? Director Chapman?
Chair, thank you. I'm just a little confused. These are issues between the city and Area D. Why is it going to the Electoral Area Services Committee? Maybe we should be sitting down with the directors involved directly and discussing this. I'm just confused.
Sure. Again, it's similar to fire. It's a contract service. So I'm happy to bring it to wherever the board does bring it to. So it's not a shared service, but clearly it's a contracted service with the city. So I'll bring it to wherever you want.
Director Wally?
I'd just remind Director Chapman, if it goes to electoral area source, it still comes to the board anyway. Just takes a couple of weeks longer.
Yes, I understand that, but if we can circumvent a lot of staff time reviewing this, if we just got Area D and city together, discuss the issues, and I think that would save a lot of time, I think.
If I might reply, Mr. Chair, staff will do the reports for electoral areas. There's no further report needed for the board. Just whatever we say at electoral areas just comes to the board. There's nothing further for staff.
I'm not opposed to having it go to the regional board. I just feel that this is electoral area business, so it should start there first. That's my thought on it.
But with respect, it's also City of Campbell River business too.
Okay. On the motion, all in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Okay, different items, closed session.
Second.
Nobody wants one? Are we already in termination? I'm not sure. I'm not emotionally ready for that. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Thank you very much, everybody. We're done before 3.